Games rated E to M. Welcome to Nintendo Power Podcast. This episode, we reveal your fan-favorite Nintendo Switch games of 2022. My name is Chris, and this time I'm joined by two members of the social media team at Nintendo of America. Anthony, welcome back, Anthony.
Good to be back.
Good to have you. And Brad, welcome aboard, Brad.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. And I'm super excited to have both of you here for this special year-end episode because, as regular listeners will know, for our final show each year, we take a look back at some of the year's best Nintendo Switch games. And we do this by asking Nintendo fans to vote for some of their favorites online. So we're going to spend the whole episode revealing the fans' top picks and talking a little bit about our favorites, too. And, of course, we're doing this just for fun. There aren't any actual awards to give out, and we picked the nominees for each category based mostly on our own favorite games here on the Nintendo Power Podcast team. So there are sure to be many more deserving titles that we didn't include. But all the nominated games, and especially the ones that the fans chose as their favorites, are really fun games that received very positive reviews this year and are well worth checking out. And I'd like to start by saying a very big thanks to everyone who took the time to play along with us and vote for their favorite games this year. We couldn't have done this without the fans, and they gave us another great response this year. Now, I'm the only one who knows how the voting went, and Brad and Anthony, I've kept you totally in the dark. So are you ready to find out which games came out on top?
Oh, yeah, the anticipation's killing me here.
Me too.
Awesome. Cool. All right, well, let's get started. We have 10 categories, and the first one is Merry Multiplayer. The nominated games here were Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, Nintendo Switch Sports, Splatoon 3, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And the fans picked Splatoon 3.
Nice.
Probably not a huge surprise there, but a very deserving win.
Yeah. I guessed that was going to be my guess, Splatoon 3. So I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, if you think about multiplayer games this year for Nintendo Switch, that's got to pop into your head as one of the first ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely one I would have chosen as well too. As someone who's putting probably over 300 plus hours into the first Splatoon, I'm definitely starting to gain that in Splatoon 3. So definitely a lot of online play.
That's awesome. You know what's funny is obviously Splatoon 3 and the Splatoon series are primarily known as being multiplayer games, but they have some really great single-player modes as well. And ironically for me, I've played a good bit of multiplayer in Splatoon 3, but I actually played more of the single-player. I like 100%ed all of those missions. So it's funny, it's not that I have to remember that Splatoon 3 is a multiplayer game, but my memories of it for this year were mostly of single-player, strangely enough. I did also play a lot of Nintendo Switch Sports multiplayer. I probably spent the most time actually playing online with people with that game this year, especially playing sports like volleyball and bowling and tennis were my three go-tos. And so for me all around, it was just a pretty great year playing games online with Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, well, they each have, unique multiplayer experiences, right? Like Splatoon 3, like you said, single player is great. And a lot of games, you kind of find that, the single player sometimes that have heavy multiplayer, single player operates as, a little bit of a tutorial at first. Obviously, there's a narrative there, but it's a good way to sort of learn the ins and outs of the game. And Splatoon does that well, but also it just is a great standalone piece of the game. So that's a great pick. And yeah, Nintendo Switch Sports, that's just the one where, you can have fun with anybody, friends, family, whatever. And it's kind of a different experience every time. But yeah, there's always like that fun sort of chaos, that ensues with whatever sport you're playing.
Absolutely. That's exactly well put, fun chaos.
Yeah, and to your point, Anthony, Splatoon 3 really evolved on the single player, portion of the game from, Splatoon 2, where the story necessarily, gave a nice climax to what the other two games were, providing, but also in a level of difficulty as well too. Like the further you got in the single player, it really, stand out on its own versus just like a tutorial for the multiplayer section.
Definitely. All right, well, moving on, the next category is intense action. And the nominated games here were Bayonetta 3, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, Splatoon 3, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And the fans picked Splatoon 3 once again.
There we go. It's a Splatoon 3 sweep apparently so far.
Tune getting some
Yeah.
love. Yeah, I was gonna say too before, like one of the things I love the most, and I don't know about you guys, but just that like there are so many different options as far as how you want to play the game, and every multiplayer game sort of has its meta, right? Where everybody uses a specific weapon that appears to be the best, or it gives you the best advantage. And Splatoon, I feel like there's just so many different ways you can approach it, depending on how you're playing with. It's a team game, obviously, so how you play with the rest of your team. And I'm also all about just my fashion and how I look in the games, and I can really take
Splatoon 3
advantage of that in
style.
Splatoon. Yeah, the style is of utmost importance.
The intense
Yeah.
style. That's the next category, Chris.
Yeah, intense style. And when you look at this list of nominated games, obviously Bayonetta 3 and certainly Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, these are games that people know as great action games, and then Splatoon 3 obviously was the top pick from the fans this time. I want to give a special shout out though to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Obviously people know who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are, and they've had a lot of great games in the past, but I really enjoyed this game. It was like a return to the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade games, that I kind of grew up with back in the day, but with some kind of modern flourishes. And this was a great game that you could play with a lot of friends locally or online, and the action in that game got pretty intense as well. So, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these nominees for sure.
Yeah, you were saying you were kind of speaking to the nostalgic element of it, and that's definitely what got me for that game. Just I felt like I needed some quarters on hand to really get into it.
I know, it definitely felt like one of the old quarter munchers for sure.
Yeah, I would also, if I want to give a shout out to Bayonetta 3 for intense action as well too, because that's the one I would have chosen for this category. Since as soon as I started playing that game until midway through is where I kind of had to take a break. It's just nonstop action, like just the direction that they were going with this game of evolving the action adventure games out there. I felt like this was watching like a movie, almost the amount of action was in it. So definitely would have been my choice for this category.
Yeah, and Anthony, back to your love of style, very stylish action in Bayonetta 3. So
Oh, yes.
it's a lot of fun to play and a lot of fun, I think, just to watch, kind of how everything goes down.
Definitely.
All right, moving on to the next category, which is Spiffy Indie. Some great indie titles this year for Nintendo Switch, and these are just a sampling of them. The nominees were first Infernax, then Shovel Knight Dig, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge once again, and Tunic. And the fans picked Tunic.
Nice.
Pretty great game. Have either of you played it very much?
Yeah, that was going to be my pick too for this category. And honestly, one of my favorite games of the year. It does so many things in such a refreshing way, but it kind of harkens back to some of the, kind of the old school Legend of Zelda style of gameplay. Clearly very inspired, and yeah, it does things refreshing while keeping it nostalgic. The visuals of the game are obviously just really pretty and unique, and yeah, I was sold from the moment I started playing the game. But yeah, Brad, I know you and I have talked about this game a little bit.
Oh, for sure. And just the aesthetic to the game, the manual inside of it and how that's incorporated into the gameplay and the story, and just really hoping that there's a physical, manual at some point that we can get our hands on, because that's such a callback to the classic games. This is a category that's is near and dear to my heart. I think nowadays I play more indie games than anything, and everything that was in this category is such a great game. And then so many games that came out this past year, as I can just go on and on about. But Tunic is definitely one that stood out to me of not only one of my favorite indie games, but just games overall this past year and past couple of years actually. To be honest, with the indie category, you just can't go wrong with an adorable fox going around. So definitely well worth it.
Definitely. This was a game that, Anthony, I think we talked about this game probably on a previous episode that I'd heard so many great things about, but hadn't played it until just recently. And I finally got started with it, and definitely everything I'd heard, was true. It does kind of harken back and give you a little bit of that old nostalgic feeling you got from something like The Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past on Super NES, but also with some kind of bits from more modern games like some of the Souls games where it's very challenging, and once you lose a life, you kind of have to trek back to where you fell to pick up your stuff or pick up some of your loot, and it's just really fun, and it is the least hand-holdy game I think I've played all year. Like you said, Brad, there's like pages of a manual scattered in the game, but until you find those, you're kind of just really kind of discovering everything there is to learn about the game, on your own, which is a lot of fun. And, again, another Legend of Zelda comparison, it reminds me of when I played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the first time, and you're really kind of learning the rules of the game as you went along. So it's a great sense of discovery there, I think. But I do also want to mention Infernax was a personal favorite of mine this year. Kind of an old school pixel graphics, Metroid type game, but really felt like a game like Castlevania 2 back on the NES. Very horror themed, some pixelated gore, so not for the faint of heart. But it has a lot of different spots in the game where you can choose to do evil or good. And that kind of gives you lots of different endings and unlockable new characters. I ended up playing through this game like 5 times just to see as much of it as I could.
Wow.
And some of the characters are really great. The characters have completely different, upgrade paths and weapons and ways that you play. So, it's almost like playing a new game every time you boot it up. So, big recommendation there from me for Infernax.
Yeah, it's a great time for indie games. So much out there to try.
Absolutely. All right, well, moving on to the next category, the 4th out of our 10, which is great graphics. And the nominated games were Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course DLC, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Triangle Strategy, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And the fans picked Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which is a very pretty game.
That's very pretty, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you kind of just get lost in it a little bit. You spend a lot of time in the world of that game, and obviously, it is a little bit of a lengthy game, but it kind of just flies by, and yeah, it's so pretty. It kind of switches up, that aesthetic a little bit from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but yeah, I'm all about that. And then, I was going to give Cuphead a shout out too, just as far as the games on that list, because, never gets old watching that game, and just the animation is so great and smooth. It's like, you're watching a classic like cartoon show, from your childhood. So, love that game so much, and the visuals in it as well.
Definitely. Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course was very close in voting. It came in at a very close number 2. And but one of the great things, Brad, I think about all these nominated games is it's such a wide variety of visual styles. I mean, Cuphead is that old school 2D animation look. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope has a great pastel-y kind of 3D look. Triangle Strategy is that mix of old school and kind of new school. And then Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is just this epic, vast, beautiful world.
Yeah, I was gonna give a shout out to Triangle Strategy there, because that HD 2D graphics, that Square Enix has been, incorporated into some of these classic looking and feeling games is just amazing. Like, I grew up with a lot of these old, 2D, sprite games, and just to see that aesthetic still going strong, but the devs evolve on the way that looks and feels is just incredible.
Yeah, it has that macro lens look we got from like Octopath Traveler, right? Where it's like you're kind of almost like they're a little miniature model on a table in front of you that you're leaning down to look at. It's really cool. All right, well, moving on to category number 5, Super Soundtrack. And the nominated games here are Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Splatoon 3, Tunic, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And the fans picked Splatoon 3, which has a great soundtrack for sure.
Oh yeah, you can't go wrong with Splatoon and the soundtrack and all the bands within the soundtrack universe or the Splatoon universe is wonderful. I sometimes just love sitting in the lobby or in the game and listening to the music play in the background.
Yeah, that's I can resonate with that. I mean, I know we've talked about Splatoon 3 a lot, but it just does so many things so well, and so differently, than a lot of the other games on the list. So love that. I also wanted to mention, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Like, that's just a game where you see it, maybe at a glimpse, maybe you're playing it, for a little while, and you can't help but smile. It just gives so many positive vibes, and the look, the soundtrack, just the gameplay is so awesome. So. That's a hard recommend for me too.
Yeah, every one of these, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the game that I played this year where it just came to me as I was playing it. Like, I bet this is, like a potential soundtrack, of the year kind of contender, because it's just, all the Xenoblade games have such great scores, but they have such epic kind of like orchestral scores to them that really just kind of helps bring the world to life even more. And then, of course, Splatoon 3, like you were saying, Anthony, is the music in that game, it really feels like it's part of the world, right? Like the style and everything really ties into it. So to the point where you're having concerts, right? When you're having Splatfests and the music's being performed in the streets of the town. So it is not just a great score, but the way it integrates with the rest of the game and really elevates the whole thing is I think, really core to what the series has been from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point. It feels like the music in that game is, it is the game in a lot of senses, right? Like, it's, whereas, a lot of times, you don't think of it that way. But yeah, this game is what it is because of that, and yeah, it's so iconic. So love it.
Yeah, and as much as I, love Splatoon 3's, soundtrack and the music in it, I do want to give a shout out to Tunic as well too. Just the atmospheric soundtrack within that game is beautiful. It has this kind of lo-fi vibe to it, where you're, exploring the world. It just really immerses you, puts you into, the world itself in Tunic. So definitely want to give a shout out to that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The game definitely has a certain kind of vibe to it that the music really plays a big role in, for sure. All right, that brings us to category 6, which is Sooo Relaxing. A lot of comfortable and cozy games here, starting with Beacon Pines, and then Bear and Breakfast, Disney Dreamlight Valley, and Dorf Romantic. And the fans picked Bear and Breakfast.
Hank the Bear. There you go. Yeah, these are all great games. Bear and Breakfast, I know, was a highly anticipated one, for the Nintendo Switch, and it finally came out. It was just nice to relax and chill with on the couch, and build out these bed and breakfasts. And Beacon Pines also, that's another one that's, I don't know if it was really talked about a lot throughout the year, but it's a really good sleeper hit, where it's a unique story, driven game where you can kind of choose the outcome of how the story progresses, and the artwork in that is also beautiful.
Definitely. And I want to say Disney Dreamlight Valley was another one of those games that seemed to break out and find a pretty big audience. My sister, who isn't the biggest gamer, but will really get pulled into certain games like Animal Crossing, really fell in love with this one. And that was a lot of our conversation related to games this year, was about that game.
Yeah, I when you said the title of this category, I feel like we need some music behind that, like when you say it's got a certain vibe. But yeah, I had predicted Bear and Breakfast would probably be the winner here. And, admittedly, I haven't gotten a ton of time with the games in this category, but I do know Bear and Breakfast is one that was highly anticipated, and I've kind of seen bits and pieces of it, and it's on my list. So I'm glad to hear that everybody's loving it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need to explore more of these kinds of games over the holiday break when it's cold outside and I just want something to relax with.
Yep.
No, these are all great games for just that. But for me, my personal choice out of this list is Dorfromantik.
Mm.
That to me, when you look at Sooo Relaxing, is the game that I'm going to time and time again, or if I just want to relax in bed, especially before I go to bed, have something relaxing to get me into the mood before I fall asleep, is just that it's beautiful game. Dorfromantik, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it is relaxing. And so when I first saw that category and that list go out, I was like, yep, I instantly had to choose Dorfromantik for my choice of this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a trait of the kinds of games that fit into this category, are the ones that it's just easy to just let time fly by while you're sitting there just kind of relaxing, de-stressing, and just having fun. Moving on next, we have number 7 category here. What a story! And the nominated games here had some great stories, starting with 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and then Live Alive, Persona 5 Royal, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And the fans picked Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Nice. That is that was kind of what I predicted.
Yeah, I mean, talk about an epic story, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely an epic story. And the best part is that you can play the game without having played the previous games in the series. That's probably a pretty hefty task for anybody who hasn't played Xenoblade Chronicles before. So can definitely get in there and play right away.
Yeah, it really is. We talked about this on the podcast a few episodes ago, but it really is a game where you don't need any prior knowledge of the series. Of course, if you do, you'll get little winks and nods from the game here and there that kind of deepen the experience for you even more. But I don't think it's the kind of thing where you'd ever be confused because you hadn't played a previous game. And I think, this series is known for having compelling stories, but this one really stood out to me, and I know some other people here at Nintendo, as being one of the most compelling stories and compelling cast of characters that the series has had so far. And that's one of the things that really kept pushing me through the game, is I really just wanted to know what was going to happen next, and were these characters going to be okay? And there's so many. Each one of them has a great little story going on, their own story, in addition to the main quest, that it just kept me wanting to play even more.
Yeah, and that's what really makes a great story, right? Is that bond between you and these characters, and wanting to know what happens to them, and you're just so invested into it, which just goes to show that this was one of the not only nominated but the winning game for this category, is just because of that character development in the overall story.
Yeah, and I'll shout out Live Alive too, because that was a game that I never played any of the original game. And to see it come out this year, and people get a chance to check that out, and if folks don't know, the game is kind of comprised of multiple different stories and different characters that you get to play, and they intersect at some point, but it's kind of one of those ones where if you like sort of a little bit more of a layered story with tons of different diverse experiences, you're not sort of following one type of gameplay the whole time. It's a good one to check out.
Yeah, definitely. And that's still, unfortunately, a game I need to get to. Maybe that'll be one of my holiday break games. But that's one of the things that's got me excited about it, is in addition to, like we were talking about with Triangle Strategy earlier, or Octopath Traveler, it has that same kind of like diorama, old school meets new school kind of look to it that I love. But then in addition to that, it's like all these different individual stories that's being told in different time periods. So I really feel like I'm going to get a lot of different types of cool stories in that one. And then, Persona 5 Royal, of course, that series is known for having great, compelling characters and story. That was actually second in the voting, that game. And then I've heard a lot of great things about 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim as well. So a lot of great, epic stories to really dive into this year on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, Persona 5 Royal is also one where I kind of think of the visual category, because it's so stylish.
Mm-hmm.
From the menus down to the combat. I mean, down to just walking around. Like, you can't help but look at every little thing, and the cutscenes are amazing. So yeah, lots of really good stuff in that game.
And the soundtrack to that game too. Okay,
Yes.
can we go back and just add it to a couple other categories? No.
The soundtrack. That's a good point. I listen to that soundtrack on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Nice. Yeah, that's just a great game overall. All right, moving on next to category number 8, Tough Challenge. And the nominated games were Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course, Infernax, Metroid Dread, specifically the new Dread mode that was added to the game this year, and Tunic. And the fans picked Metroid Dread mode.
Nice.
That is definitely a tough challenge. And I'm not even going to humble brag. I'm just going to flat out brag that I actually completed Dread mode.
Subtle flex.
Not so subtle. I'm not usually great at challenging hard modes, but I love this game so much I wanted to do it. And it actually wasn't that bad because, it's not like you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the game if you lose a life, but, you can kind of, run past enemies if you have to. The bosses are what's tough because you have to beat each boss fight without taking a hit. And I will admit that I spent hours and hours on a lot of the bosses, especially the last one. But it was a great kind of final run through for me for that game, at least for the time being, because I played through it when it first came out several times because I just loved the flow and the feel of that game. But obviously, Infernax is also a very challenging game. And Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course, well, even the base Cuphead game, people know it's kind of famous for being a very challenging game. And then Tunic, like we said before, was surprisingly challenging when you start out thinking, look how cute this game is, and then it kind of kicks your butt a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of picked up Tunic with that mindset, and then quickly learned that nope, this is a tough challenge right here. I was fortunate enough to beat Tunic, but this is not a humble brag like you, Chris. I had to turn on some settings to get me through the Tunic to make things a little bit easier for me because I just really wanted to enjoy the story and the atmosphere and not really have to challenge myself to get through it. So I definitely appreciate that there's that functionality and that settings in the game to do that. But it's probably one of the toughest games that I've ever played.
And that's a great point, and something that a lot of these games, these really challenging games, do very well is they offer you options, right? So, obviously you don't have to play Dread mode. If you're playing Metroid Dread, you can play on varying difficulties. Even Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course, and the base game, there are different items you can equip, or you can play with a second player. Different things you can do. You can also, with the Delicious Last Course DLC, select a new playable character that has some abilities that makes the game a little bit easier for newer players. So, there's different ways in a lot of these games, whether they have, different straight up difficulty settings or not, different things you can do to kind of adjust the difficulty maybe to the level. And then, you kind of, as you build up your skills, you maybe want to challenge some of the trickier parts or different trickier difficulty modes. So I think a lot of these games are very good about being accessible while still offering that top level challenge for people that want it.
Yeah, and there's different types of challenges too, right? Like Metroid Dread's a game where, maybe you're doing a lot of combat and fighting the bosses in Dread mode's difficult for you, but also there's a lot of like sort of puzzles in there, right? And you have to maybe backtrack a little bit or figure out a certain thing to hit on the map. And Cuphead is a lot more of like just difficulty in terms of like the enemies you fight and like dodging projectiles and stuff like that. So I like that each one's a little bit different. But I'm kind of a sucker for that challenge, and I'd like to say I succeed more often than not, but I don't know if that's the case.
Well, the surprising thing for me with a lot of these types of games is I usually just pick normal difficulty, and I'm not looking to make a game super challenging. But if a game becomes challenging and I'm really enjoying it, or in a rare case for me, like I want to try to play something like Metroid Dread mode, I'm always surprised by. As long as you're patient and you just go into it knowing that you're gonna have to kind of build up your skills and build up your knowledge of how to play the game. I'm always surprised at how great games like this, you'll get good and you'll do things that maybe you didn't think you'd be able to do eventually, and it's always so much more rewarding when you kind of conquer those mountains. And I think the highs are really high in games like this, where that feeling of satisfaction. So that's why I think challenging games are great as long as you have fun along the way.
Yeah, maybe follow it up with one of the games in the couple categories ago, the relaxing game, so you can do the challenging one and
Yeah,
then
right.
relax, a little bear and breakfast after.
Just like sprinkle it in there. I
Yeah.
like that. All right, the next to last category is Rad Revival, and the nominated games were Capcom Fighting Collection, Klonoa Fantasy Reverie Series, Sonic Origins, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection. And the fans picked Klonoa Fantasy Reverie Series. Maybe a
Nice.
little bit of a
Nice.
dark horse pick, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of fans out there, a lot of longtime game players know that the Klonoa series is a really great platforming series.
Yeah, I kind of thought people would pick Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that's good to hear that there's like, a little bit of a dark horse win there, and that's one for me that I haven't tried yet. So yeah, a little bit more motivation for myself.
Yeah, this is an older IP that I remember, and I think we announced during a Nintendo Direct earlier this year, and it was definitely one of the standout titles that a lot of people were talking about. And so I haven't actually had a chance to go back and play, this particular one, but looking forward to it because I do remember playing those games back in the day, and I just really loved the characters.
Yeah, I love the flow of them. Even though they have 3D graphics and the camera kind of moves around you at times, it's still very much a side-scrolling kind of action platforming game. And just the mechanic of like grabbing an enemy and kind of flipping them, kind of tossing them around, and how that plays into some action kind of based puzzles. It's always just really fun and satisfying. Um, my personal pick, even though I really enjoyed Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, probably would have been Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection because it's pure nostalgia. I mean, it's all those old, 8-bit and 16-bit and arcade Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, like the original arcade game, and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES, which is infamously difficult, but somehow as a kid, I had that extra kid power playing the NES and managed to beat it. So I love going back and revisiting those, and it's just a huge volume of games too. And then, of course, Capcom Fighting Collection. I mean, those are some true classics in the genre. And then Sonic Origins actually was the close runner-up in this category. Obviously, the appeal and to the Sonic fans and the Sonic faithful is always going to be there. And when you look back at those classic 16-bit and Sonic CD Sonic games, that's just that was Sonic in his prime, I think, for a lot of fans. So some great stuff there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all great collections here, and to like you, Chris, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection is my personal choice and pick after this one. I remember as a kid going into the arcades with a fistful of quarters and just spending the afternoon. That's really kind of what really got me into gaming as a whole is growing up in the arcades and playing some of these classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade games. And so this definitely holds a place near and dear to me, this collection.
For sure. And those arcade games too were great and still are great to play with friends on the couch. And that brings us to our 10th and final category, Players Game of the Year. And as usual, for this one category, we doubled the number of nominees. And the nominees were Bayonetta 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, Splatoon 3, Tunic, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It's a lot of good stuff there.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask, Anthony, I'm going to put you and Brad on the spot here to begin with. What would you have picked, or what do you think the fans might have picked? Which one jumps out to you maybe the most in this list of big games?
Yeah. Let's see. So if I'm thinking about what the fans might have picked, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 kind of stands out to me as a big one. I just think that, for one, fans of the series have really sort of been vocal about what they love about this game. The music, the visuals, we talked about all that already, and I think it all just comes together for just an awesome experience for people who haven't played the game before and people who have been waiting for it. So that's one, and I'd say Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, like, I really love, just sort of how those games approached the Pokemon video game series and did some new things, and just the world is just so much bigger than ever before, and there's so much to do. And, if you've grown up playing Pokemon games like me, it's kind of the Pokemon game you always wished for when you were a kid. It's right there. So, two for me that sound, obviously these are all amazing games. It's really hard to pick, but I just wanted to mention those two.
Yeah, there's a lot of great games that came out this past year. But I think I'm going to have to piggyback off of Anthony for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as probably the player's game of the year choice, if I had to guess out of this list. For my personal pick, though, would be Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That was just an amazing journey with Kirby, and seeing him in some of those new environments and then taking a new direction on the gameplay for that franchise was just so fun to be a part of. So that would be my personal choice.
Tell you what, those great comments, great picks. It was an incredibly tight race between many of these titles, very close voting throughout. And the fans picked Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
There it is.
You guys really have your finger on the pulse there.
That's the one. Yeah, again, it just, kind of as we talked about it through some of the other categories, it all makes sense that, this is the fans' pick. But again, all really, really good games. I feel like I could say something about each of these.
Yeah, I think if any one of these had won, I wouldn't have been very surprised. I think they're all very deserving. And I think, it's one of those things where if we cast the polls, in a different week, maybe we get a different result. Every single week we do it, because you really can go back and forth with a lot of these. I'd be really hard-pressed to pick my own favorite. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3 probably would have been right there in my final decision-making. Can't really debate with the fans at all. Really, really enjoy that game. And in addition to just being a very fun game to play, it just has some very memorable characters that'll stick with me for a long time.
Yeah, I'll say one other thing about it, too, is that this is the third game in the series, and I think a lot of people know that, this sort of like wraps that trilogy up in a lot of ways. And I don't know that there's too many other games on the list where, it's sort of like a closing of what's been a very sort of epic and a little bit of a longer story. So that I feel like that adds a little bit of an extra layer to it of like, yeah, it's sort of a nice wrap to what's been just a really great story.
Yeah, anytime you can tell a great epic story and really have a very, very satisfying conclusion that kind of sends you home happy, then that's going to really resonate with you for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, great. That's it for the Nintendo Switch fan favorite games of 2022. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm already looking forward to some really cool Nintendo Switch games that are coming early next year, like Fire Emblem Engage in January, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe in February, Bayonetta Origins, Syriza and the Lost Demon in March, and a little game called The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in May. And then you got Pac-Man 4, which releases sometime next year, and, who knows what else. So, I think the voting next year might be pretty tough, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. 2023 is shaping up to be a good year.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about indie games that have come out this year. I feel like, we're in for something even, bigger and better next year. I mean, as different types of games come out, new approaches to different game styles. Feels like it's the indie area. This year, the past couple of years, has always been something to really keep an eye on. So I'm looking forward to seeing what games we get next year.
Definitely. There's definitely a few indie games that I've had my eye on for a while, and I really hope come out next year. I'm not sure about the release date on some of them, but definitely a lot to look out for and a lot to get excited about. Well, Brad and Anthony, thanks for coming on the show, and I hope you have a very happy holiday.
You too. Had a ton of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Chris.
Thanks.
All right, see you next time. That's it for the 5th year of Nintendo Power Podcast. If you have any comments or questions you'd like us to consider answering on the show, you can email us at nintendopowerpodcast@noa.nintendo.com. Also, we always appreciate it if you can leave a review, and be sure to subscribe so you get new episodes as soon as they're ready. Thanks for listening, and keep playing with power all next year.